Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:37, it's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here this Tuesday morning. We are just beginning the confirmation process of Trump's cabinet today, and we're also now in the final countdown. Final countdown. It's 6 days now to the inauguration, and those festivities are starting to shape up for us as well. Coming up at 6:35, Ben Weingarten. No, that's right now. We got Ben Weingarten right now.
Yes.
Well, we should probably get right to him. All right. Hold on, Ben. I know you can hear me. At 7:05, Byron York will be here. Hey, Ben, Byron's coming up. At 8:05, Rob Sweetman is a Navy SEAL. He's here to support Pete Hegseth for SecDef. And then at 8:35, Joel Pollack out there at the Pacific Palisades for the Breitbart News. That's Julie Gunlock. I'm Larry O'Connor, and the aforementioned Ben Weingarten is here. So let's get right to him. He writes at the Federalist as well as Real Clear Investigations. Good morning, Ben. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, notwithstanding my suffering Vikings fandom this morning.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm terribly sorry. You know, that's what happens when you lose to the Lions. You immediately lose to the Rams. That's just the Vikings' entire season. Should I not rub salt into the wound? I'm a Lions fan.
No, you shouldn't.
Well, you know what? It's been decades of this, so I'm numb to it at this point. I just feel bad for my young kids, and I hope they're not Vikings fans. Maybe they'll be Lions fans like you.
There you go. Exactly. It's not too late. Everyone's jumping on board. Or the Commanders. I'd be happy with the Commanders, too. We're
There you go.
Or the Redskins. Hey, Ben.
Exactly, Redskins. Yep.
Special Prosecutor David Weiss put out his report. Now, of course, he was investigating Hunter Biden. He was the U.S. attorney that was ready to make a sweetheart deal with Hunter Biden until that was blown up, thankfully, because of the whistleblowers, the IRS whistleblowers who explained how David Weiss had actually inhibited any real criminal investigation. So, of course, Merrick Garland named him to be the special prosecutor. I'm guessing after the pardon of Hunter Biden, this report didn't really rise to any level of legitimate investigation. Or I could be wrong. I'd like to be pleasantly surprised. What did you make of it?
This report is the capper on a total whitewash, fraudulent, so-called investigation and prosecution.
Yeah.
I had always anticipated that. Remember, Weiss himself had tanked the case. As you noted, it was the IRS whistleblowers who came forward and forced the DOJ to rush to concoct this hastily slapped together deal that a judge in Delaware, federal judge, had never seen anything like before, to provide essentially a global get out of jail free card to Hunter Biden. And when it collapsed under basic questioning, that's when the DOJ suddenly got serious about actually prosecuting. Not, of course, for the crimes that directly dealt with the Biden family's international influence peddling scheme, but those so-called gun charges, and then as well the tax evasion on the ill-gotten gains. And that's about as close as we got to the actual behavior that impacted U.S. national interest and showed that this was really a compromised administration. And what Weiss did in this report was essentially he went after Joe Biden for the pardon and for taking gratuitous shots, in Weiss's view, at the DOJ. And he went at Hunter Biden's team for attacking the DOJ for being, quote, vindictive in their prosecution, citing the judges who said that that was garbage. But effectively what they did was they brought the cases that were at furthest removed possible from Joe Biden. And then obviously the pardon sealed the deal in terms of getting effectively a global get-out-of-jail-free community card. So at the end of the day, this 27-page report doesn't really detail all the things that we should have known about. Like, for example, what about the FARA charges? What about the human trafficking charges, potentially? All of that was covered up. And as well, David Weiss kind of skates over the fact that the IRS whistleblowers forced them to bring these cases in the first place. So this is the whitewash we expected. But he gets to create the appearance, Weiss does, of being serious here about the rule of law by saying, see, we prosecuted, and look at how Joe Biden shamefully attacked the fine folks at the DOJ as a consequence.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's just Weiss complaining about how he was treated, essentially. He doesn't, it's really him just saying, I was the good guy here, but then doesn't really go into the really big, like you mentioned, the FARA issues or the China and Ukraine relationship with Hunter and Joe Biden. So again, it really is just Weiss kind of trying to make himself look good.
This is what the DOJ does, protect the institution. And that is precisely what they did here. They get to create the appearance of being serious about prosecuting someone, even the president's son. But by the same token, as we know, it was only because the IRS whistleblowers came
Yeah.
forward, and it was only because Judge Noreka in Delaware had the courage to blow up the
Yep.
case under basic questioning that we even got that. The DOJ will long outlast the Bidens, and I think that's the big takeaway here.
Do you have any indications that the Trump administration is still going to look into this, despite the pardon? In fact, frankly, I think the pardon gives them more than enough leeway to go ahead and continue this investigation, because it can't be seen as some sort of political persecution of Hunter Biden. They can say, listen, we can't put him in jail, but the American people still need to know the truth about all of this and all of the crimes that are detailed in this laptop. So this is not about harming President Biden or harming his son by throwing him in jail. It's about letting the American people know the truth about what happened here.
That's absolutely right. And there's two levels to it. One is what happened here in the way of the compromise of the Biden family. And then what is the nexus between the compromise of the Biden family and the policies that were undertaken right up till the end of this presidency? And then number two, what about the FBI and DOJ sabotaging and tanking of the case? And I thought that Weiss was going to try to cleverly find a way to explain that away, but he didn't even do that in this cursory 27-page report that he put out.
Yeah.
So I do believe that this is absolutely ripe for, first of all, the cleansing of information by this incoming DOJ and FBI, and then two, or continued oversight work to actually expose these files to the American people. And I'm bullish on the fact that there will be some sort of accounting and reckoning here.
Good.
Precisely because we've heard that James Comer is going to talk to Kash Patel, for example, and work closely with him potentially. And of course, there's been a document preservation orders put out by this Congress as well. So at the very least, we need to get a full accounting for what went down here, the sabotaging and tanking of the investigation, and then how much broader should it have been, and what other charges should have been brought. We should demand that as the American people, that we get that cleansing of information.
Ben Weingarten, Real Clear Investigations. Listen, I know you've got some strong information here about the Hegseth nomination that's going up for confirmation in a moment, and also you're pumped about Jennifer Rubin's new journalistic endeavor. Can you stick around for one more segment here? We got to do a little business, but can you stay with us for one more?
Happy to do it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you've got time on your hands. The next Vikings game is until August, so you're good. Okay, we're going to...
You had to do that.
I'm sorry. I did.
Yeah.
Brutal.
It's 6:49. We continue with Ben Weingarten, editor-at-large at Real Clear Investigations, senior contributor at the Federalist. I know you're tracking the confirmation process for Pete Hegseth. We were just remarking on how, there was a lot of heat on Pete Hegseth, lots of anonymously sourced articles making a lot of allegations, but he seems to have fought back that one volatile week, sort of showed Trump that he was willing to fight for this, and then they put their head down, did their discreet meetings, and here we are on confirmation. A lot of people didn't think he'd even get to a confirmation hearing, Ben.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And what I think this illustrates is that Republicans are going to fight just as hard and just as tough as Democrats, or at least nominees that are going to make it through the internal vetting process and then go before the Senate as well. This is a change that we've seen in the Republican Party, and I really expect that Pete Hegseth is going to acquit himself quite well today. He's going to go through, probably challenge the allegations head on. If I had to guess, he's going to explain why he's the right person equipped to help the president execute on his agenda, and he's going to explain how he's going to get our military back to war fighting, dominance, crushing our enemies, and deterring them by that strength. And I wrote about at the Federalist kind of the broader takeaway for what we should be looking at in these confirmation hearings. And my point is that Republican senators who might be wobbly have to know what the stakes are. It's not about the individual nominees, although each one is obviously critical. It's about a broader political war. And what Democrats want to do is try and destabilize and delegitimize the incoming administration, thwart its momentum during the first 100 days, and ultimately sabotage and subvert it, as they tried to do during Trump 1. And that's why it's imperative to confirm these nominees swiftly and quickly to get the administration moving to the benefit of the American people, to the benefit of these senators, and ultimately to the detriment of Democrats who are going to do everything they possibly can, I believe, to try and throw salt in the gears.
It is pretty sickening to watch these Democrats oppose these nominees when they're Democrat president is in severe mental decline and should not be the seated president. But you mentioned some Republicans that are wobbly. Who do you see as some of the Republicans who might raise objections or who might not vote for these nominees?
I think it's going to vary ultimately by nominee in terms of who has potential reservations. I mean, look, we obviously saw Joni Ernst indicated that she was unsure about where she wanted to go with Pete Hegseth, for example, and then there was a swift and vigorous backlash. And the threat of being primaried is a real threat here that I think is more tangibly felt by incumbents in the Senate than probably at any other time, with the power of an Elon Musk, for example, and others in the MAGA movement. So, there obviously could be some questions there, but maybe the concerns have been allayed on her end, and she's going to be in line, and we'll see today, obviously. And then there are folks who have issues, I think, to some degree with Tulsi Gabbard, although I understand that she's allayed some of those with respect to her views on FISA, for example. But, the broader point is, we're the shoe on the other foot. Democrats would never have these sorts of issues. And if we want to talk about fitness, we can talk about the lack of fitness and the lack of qualifications for a whole slew of Democrat nominees under Joe Biden that Republicans voted for in large numbers. And Republicans have to operate politically the same way Democrats do.
Thank you.
This is about power, and it's about numbers, and it's about ultimately having the unity for the greater good, which is an agenda that, again, if implemented faithfully, is going to redound to the benefit of Americans, Republicans and Democrats. It's going to help Republicans grow their majorities, and ultimately it's going to foster potentially this realignment opportunity that the MAGA movement has given the broader party. So that has to be the focus. Even if there are some disagreements on policy between some of the nominees and their historical records and those in the Senate, they have to serve the president of the United States. That is ultimately the person whose policy and whose worldview matters. And so if these people are faithful and loyal to that agenda, that should be the determining factor at the end of the day. This should effectively be a pro forma exercise, absent something completely extraordinary that comes up. And I'm sure Democrats are going to try to throw out allegations that maybe we haven't heard before, maybe concocted out of whole cloth, maybe based on a kernel or a nugget of truth. Republicans need to show that they understand the stakes here when it comes to defending these nominees and ultimately seeing them pass through the process.
Well, none of that's going to happen if Jennifer Rubin has anything to say about it. She and Norm Eisen announced yesterday Jennifer Rubin is leaving the Washington Post, has left. She's starting her own independent publication. And Ben Weingarten, listen, Tom Bevan and Molly Hemingway are pals of mine. I know that you're working for them at Real Clear Investigations and the Federalist, respectively. Do you want me to break the news that you're jumping ship so you can join the pirate ship there with Norm Eisen and Jennifer Rubin? It's going to make the Bulwark look like a cruise in the Caribbean.
Yeah, as much as the Vikings may have broken my brain and my spirit last night, I will not be jumping ship there.
All right,
and I have a Mets season around the corner as well. But these videos are just simply so cringe of Jennifer Rubin and Norm Eisen out there. They're so jazzed about quote unquote democracy, i.e., tyrannical rule by these pseudo intellectual elites. And they're so self-important. I think that's part of it. There's that arrogance among them, and maybe understandably the arrogance among a Norm Eisen, because he's probably had a lot of political and legal victories, I guess you could say. But ultimately, their entire sort of being is tied up in trying to act in authoritarian ways, frankly, at the end of the day. Control the rubes, make decisions for us, keep us safe from ourselves. And so, another publication that effectively is going to look like a grift or a lost leader for whoever the wealthy philanthropists are who are going to be behind it. Have fun burning those millions of dollars on that enterprise.
You laugh now. We're all going to be asking Jen Rubin for a job coming up soon. All right, Ben Weingarten, good talking with you. Good job. Thanks.